Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for another Hatton's live session where we look at some of the best locomotives on the market today and the real life engines that inspired the models as well. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're actually looking at the history of one of Britain's most famous types of locomotive and giving you an indication of some of the models that have been available past and are available right now in the present as well. And where to start but Gresley's LNER Class A4 462. The fastest steam locomotive in the world, some of the most famous locomotives to run in the UK. They're an immensely popular machine, really got the fan base throughout the UK and beyond as well. So I'll be giving you a little bit of the story behind the locomotives and the real life engines and the models as well. But do ask any questions you've got in the chat. If it's regarding A4s, I will do my best to answer them whilst we are on the stream. So where to start apart from the beginning? And let's go back to the 1930s. We've got Gresley on the LNER building many fantastic LNER A1 and A3 Pacifics, such as the Flying Scotsman. Now, Gresley heads over to Germany in the early 1930s and sees a lot of streamlined diesel rail cars that are in use. Really nice machines, again, completely transforming the German railway system at the time. Gresley thinks that he can have a streamlined locomotive with more passenger capacity, so it can haul a full train behind it rather than just a small rail car. He gets the A3, he expands it, he has higher boiler pressure in there as well, and also gives this beautiful streamlined coating that you see here. So really defined, not only for the appearance as well, the 1930s really were the era of streamlined railways, but also it did have a great effect on the running of the locomotives as well. There was 4 originally built, all painted silver, as you see here, which was a complete departure for the LNER at the time. They were named Silver King, Silver Link, Silver Fox, and I'll be honest, I can't remember the 4th one, but I'm sure one of you will tell me in the chat. But they were painted for the Silver Jubilee service, which was launched in 1935. And that completely, again, transformed express services on the LNER. It was a time of fierce rivalry between the East Coast with the LNER and the West Coast with the LMS as well. Both of them breaking various speed records, being the fastest to get from London to Scotland. And on one of the press runs in 1935, Silverlink actually attained a speed of 112 miles an hour, breaking the record at the time. Do remember that record breaker because we'll be covering that a little bit more shortly. So the design was an immediate success. They were higher powered, more efficient, better runners than the A3s as well. So we've got a real success story already starting. And more locomotives were commissioned, being built throughout the 1930s, heading into the late 1930s as well. So the names on these locomotives were originally named after many items of wildlife and birds found throughout the UK, but they were quickly changed to be more prestigious. We see here Empire of India at King's Cross in the late 1930s. A lot of locomotives were quickly renamed after jewels in the crown of the British Empire at the time. We have Empire of India, Commonwealth of Australia, Dominion of New Zealand and Canada as well. So really celebrating Britain in the 1930s with some of the most prestigious locos in the UK at the time. World War II, we'll get to that in a little bit second because we've got some even more great news on the A4s before that, and that's the 3rd of July 1938. Now, most of you will no doubt know this date already, but it's the date when Mallard, number 4468, was taken on a surprise, some people say secret, some people say it was always intended, attempt at breaking the world speed record, which had been taken back by the Germans in 1937. Mallard did it. It's still the fastest steam locomotive to date as well. It's in the National Railway Museum in York to celebrate that as well. And it achieved 126 miles an hour. That's the fastest official recorded speed by any steam locomotive in the world. There are a couple of locomotives that say they got faster, but it's nothing fully, completely recorded. And Andrew there, thank you, Andrew, helping me out. We've got Quicksilver as well. That was the fourth of the silver locomotives. So even just 3 years after construction, the A4s had really made their mark, not only in the streamlined colours, including the apple green that you see here too. You've got the garter blue that was only ever carried by the A4 locomotives, and the 4 locomotives painted silver for the Silver Jubilee service as well. Coming up into wartime, some of the locomotives were named after famous generals in the war and other figures throughout the war as well to commemorate them. A number of locomotives were painted into black at the time it's a bit tricky to get the full livery as you see here, especially in wartime when you're trying to keep the trains running as well. So a lot of the locomotives did lose these really stylish liveries then. And unfortunately, one was lost in a bomb accident in York as well. Sir Ralph Wedgwood was destroyed. But all the other A4s carried on. They did some sterling work during the war, not only on expresses, but handling some of the heavy freight and troop trains too. And then came back into their own during the late 1940s when they were taken back over by British Railways. So some new liveries came up then. Originally, they did keep the garter blue heading into the BR era, but very quickly, the BR Brunswick green, as you see there, and the BR Caledonian style blue as well. The locomotives remained on top link duties right through the 1950s, even with newer design locomotives, such as the Britannias coming in as well, the Peppercorn A1s and A2s. The A4s were still the top link locomotive used on heavy expresses between London, York, all up the East Coast to Edinburgh and even to Aberdeen as well. Right towards the end, there was a couple of developments just to make sure they could really squeeze as much out of the A4s as possible, with double chimney developments on the models, making sure that they were as efficient as possible. A lot of the locomotives were rebuilt in the late 1950s and continued on those express workings right into the 1960s. Unfortunately, modernisation always has its effect. And as you can imagine, the A4s were superseded mainly by the Deltic diesel locomotives, which came in the early 1960s, but they still held their own in Scotland right up until 1966, when the final locomotive was withdrawn from service. But that's not where the story ends. 6 locomotives still survive today, commemorating this unique class of engine, and they've all got their own little histories to tell. So we will take a closer look at some of the details there as well. I'll show you 3 of those engines now that are still surviving today. You've got Union of South Africa, Sir Nigel Gresley, commemorating the designer of the locomotive, and Bittern, number 60019 as well. The scene there in that photograph at the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, and these 3 survive in service in preservation to this day. The most important locomotive still survives too, and that is Mallard. It's now a fixture in the National Railway Museum in York. It is static display, but it's seen by millions of people a year, and it did steam for its 50th anniversary of the record run in 1988 as well. And it is kept in that condition from the 1930s there with the full skirts too. If we pop back to the BR liveried locomotives, you'll see that the skirts have been removed. They were removed during the war to make it a bit more easier to maintain the valve gate and the various fittings there too. So there's 4 locomotives surviving in the UK today, the 3 we see on the screen and Mallard, but 2 have made it a little bit further. Now they are the Dominion of Canada and Dwight D. Eisenhower as well, named after the US president. Now, Dwight D. Eisenhower was donated to the National Railroad Museum in the US in the 1960s, and Dominion of Canada was donated to the Canadian Railroad in the 1960s. So they both went across the Atlantic, by lots of enthusiasts over there as well, and they did actually come back. In 2012, they returned to the UK, and they were fully cosmetically restored, with Dominion of Canada being restored into the LNER Garter Blue, and Dwight D. Eisenhower being restored into the BR green. And all 6 A4s, the surviving A4, shall we say, were back on UK soil for a couple of years, but since Dwight D. Eisenhower and Dominion of Canada have returned to North America. So if you are an A4 fan and you want to check one out internationally, you can head to those 2 museums and see one there as well. So covering some of the liveries as well, and Norton Woods mentioned that they are apple green too. You can see here in front of me, we've got the Engage model here in apple green, but there was quite a few different liveries carried by the class. Originally starting in the silver, then heading over to the apple green and the garter blue, as you see here. They did carry wartime black. 1 or 2 locomotives carried experimental purple in the late 1940s. Heading into the full BR era, you have the BR blue, which is carried by 60,007, which I'll just show you that photo again so you can see the difference there. And finally, the Brunswick green livery carried by 60,009 and 60,019 in the image we see on the screen now. So quite a variety of liveries for this class, some of which were only actually carried by the A4s as well, especially the silver and the garter blue. But there's a lot of you have been looking at the models on the desk, as you can already see, and I thought I'd get some of the models past and present of A4s, because with it being one of the most popular locomotives in the UK, models have been made ever since the real locomotives have come through. So in front of me now, we have some of the past and present models that you can see. So starting on your left, my right, we have the Minitrix Engage locomotive from the 1970s and 1980s, which was available in a few different liveries at the time. Heading over next, we have the Hornby Dublo version, which was produced right from the 1930s onwards in a variety of different liveries, produced into the 1960s. There's still quite a few of these out there, but they are collector's items now. And I'm sure some of the older generation watching today will have had one of these on either a 2 or a 3 rail setup. Dapol have recently produced their own Engage A4, which we do have stock available now. So if you click that link in the description for more info, we have the apple green here, and they've covered it right through up to the later liveries as well, which I'll give you a little bit of a spotlight on there. This is Dapol's Engage A4, and this is Seagull in the BR green with the early crest. Just let you get a closer look at that. Okay, carrying on through the table, Hornby, after the Hornby Dublo locomotive, have regularly had an A4 in their range as well. There's been quite a few different toolings available from the 1960s model, 1970s, there was a later model made in the late 1990s, and finally, the fully detailed, super detailed model that we have here, originally released in 2004, but still holds its own with the detail. It's got full digital capacity in there, lots of separately fitted detail, all the tooling variations for A4s right through the lives. Even this particular example, number 4464, as some of you have mentioned, is in its currently preserved livery with the second water carrying tender too. And again, that is available to order right now as well. So last but not least, we've already had a few mentions. Lakota for Ralph has mentioned the Silver Link A4 at the back. And this is one of the first O-gauge ready-to-run LNER locomotives. This is a commission by ourselves with Helgen, and we've got these available in various different liveries. They've been out now a couple of months, and you can order the LNER silver livery there. You can order the LNER garter blue right through again to the BR green with various different examples there as well. Andrew Mearder making a really good point regarding the history, saying don't forget there was a lot of competition for highest speed between the LMS with the Coronation Scott and the LNER on the East Coast with the King's Cross services with the highest speed. You're absolutely spot on there, Andrew. A lot of why the A4 was built was to just get the fastest and most powerful locomotives at a time of intense rivalry between the LNER and the LMS in the 1930s, with services such as the Silver Jubilee and the West Riding Limited as well. These locomotives were the fastest of the fast. The LMS tried to take the record by building these streamlined coronations, but they didn't quite get that close, unfortunately. I believe they got to about 115 miles an hour, but not quite the 126 of the A4. And for me, I've got to say, looking at this, that is 1930s style for me, really. You've got to see there that full lining, the streamlined finish, the chrome letters on the tender as well. You've got all the details available there. This is rail travel in the 1930s. This is the fastest it got, the sleekest it got, with the teak carriages just behind there as well that you can see. It doesn't really get better than that. And it's great to see that 6 of the locomotives survive today as well, with Bittern and Mallard we see there, and the 3 locomotives in steam at the North Yorkshire Moors Railway too. So obviously there is a lot more to the A4s than what I can cover in a very quick stream for you, but I hope you've given you some inspiration to go and find out some more about the history yourselves, see some of the models that you may remember from yesteryear, or you can see that are available right now to order as well. If you click that link in the description, there is a lot more information on the current models we have available and some of the vital statistics on the A4s as well, things like tractive effort, length, horsepower, etc., etc. So if you'd like to find out a little bit more, either about the models or the real-life locos, do check that link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and like our Facebook page as well for more details too. But again, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.